Hi, everybody. Welcome to the QB School. I'm JT O'Sullivan. Today, what is an NFL quarterback room like? I've been waiting a long time to do this video. I think you will dig it. Let's get it started. Welcome to the QB School. If you dig this kind of content and you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the bell, get the notifications, let you know when we go live, when we put out new content. I very much appreciate the support for the channel. So the idea for this video has been brewing for a long time. Finally came to fruition here with a question from John Snow. Great video. I really enjoy these kind of behind the scenes stories that former players or coaches can tell. Another suggestion, maybe a video about the quarterback room in general. What's it like? The dynamic rivalries in your favorite moments, as well as going through other QBs that were on the roster during your career. John, outstanding question. There is a lot in there. And so I'm going to try to tackle as many as I possibly can. I might even add what I thought was my worst moment in the quarterback meeting room as well. But in short, I can do kind of a few different things. So my general kind of overarching takeaway from the quarterback room in the NFL is it is one of those like dream situations, kind of like getting into your dream school and then getting into like the elite seminar, whatever program that you want to be in. And so you know that there is the best of the best at what they do in the country in this room. There's only 30 other rooms, 32 other rooms, 31 other rooms, and you know that the best of the best is happening in these rooms. So right off the gate, you're excited. You know, essentially everyone is at some level competent, to say the least. And so for me, there was always this kind of shared responsibility that I felt like it was the best of the best, and you had to really bring your A game every single time. And going from someone who went back to school to do a doctorate, it's very similar to that type of vibe where you're in a small classroom. You're sitting around big tables, usually have your own space, but you need to come having done the reading, having a strong opinion one way or another, having some sort of input to move the group forward. But there's also this weird dichotomy of being able to really try to get better yourself individually. You're always working to improve, to play at the highest level, to have a job, all those kind of things, individualized characteristics, thoughts, with this overarching larger collective movement, which is you want the position to play well. It's in the best interest of everyone in the room for the quarterback position to play well. So you really have a shared responsibility to help the starter, whoever's playing, to play at a high level. Because really quickly you realize that there's a number of different paths towards being a decision maker in the league, and many of them usually go through the quarterback room. And so the people in that room, whether they're former quarterbacks, whether they're quarterback coaches on the path to being an offensive coordinator, being on the path to being a head coach, all those things kind of go through the quarterback room one way or another. I'm not saying all the time, but I would say more than any other position seems like the natural path. And so there is this kind of badge of honor that goes into being in the quarterback room. I will also say that the quarterback room for me was one of the places early on in my career where I realized that I belong in the league. You know, as a non-scholarship Division II player, you know, mildly undersized, less than 6'2", that idea, you know, early on was, you know, do I even belong here? And so really quickly, yes, the vast majority of people are very intelligent in that room, but let's not get it twisted. We're not splitting atoms. And so you can quickly tease out the people that do the work, that do the reading, that do the film work, that do the preparation, that study the game plan, probably like you can tease out in every program across every single level. And not everybody puts in the work. And one way or another, the league will filter you out. And so you can tell pretty quickly. I remember being early on in a quarterback meeting, and one of the quarterbacks inverted the defensive ends and the defensive tackles with where they line up on the whiteboard. Now, taught me a few lessons. One is, okay, I'm going to be all right here. And two, if you're a coach and you put someone up on the whiteboard, you better hope that they know the answer, because it can cause some internal disarray really quickly when that player is the starter potentially or going to play and doesn't know where people line up on the field. And so that was my immediate thought, two thoughts from there. But in general, you know, it was one of those things where for me, I always felt like I learned a lot. And I think you learn, just like any kind of workplace environment, you learn pretty quickly that there are some people that are probably on an upward trajectory and some people that aren't, or are comfortable with the status quo, or are kind of looking for an exit route. And so, but the vast majority of people, I would say, and coming from a guy who's went with a number of different franchises, most of the quarterback rooms got along really well. I think the only time that I ever felt like significant tension was when I thought whoever was playing was injured and didn't necessarily vocalize it. And it was hampering their play. It was hurting the organization. We were losing games, and they weren't being honest about how they felt. And I felt like we in the quarterback room knew that, but it was never vocalized. And I certainly didn't think it was my place, to go out there and tell him or tell people in the organization, hey, I think he's hurt. I think everybody knew he was hurt. It was one of those fine lines between playing through pain, playing through being injured, and, letting someone come in and potentially take your job. And so those types of things were probably the biggest tensions for me. It was never really, hey, I should be playing. Hey, I think I'm getting screwed out of a spot or out of reps in practice. Many of those decisions aren't made in the quarterback room. For as much as people, aspire maybe to be a quarterback coach at the highest level, like any organization, most of the meaningful decisions are made in a different room. We were not in the room where it happened, so to speak. We were in the room where you get to the nuts and bolts, the on-field execution, the decision-making, the reads, the vision from that position, how we're going to attack certain coverages, certain down and distance, those types of things. That is on elite peak level of kind of where I was at early in my career as far as just football curiosity. Just wanted to soak it in as much as I possibly could. But pretty quickly you realize that it's just football. And, it's about execution. It's about people. It's about who you're playing with, who you're playing against, all those types of things. But for me, it was very similar to how I view the huddle, which is now essentially a dinosaur in football. But this idea being it's a very sacred space. You say stuff in the quarterback room that you probably wouldn't say with the wide receivers or with the offensive line unit or with the whole team. There's a lot of honesty. There's a lot of, hey, nothing leaves this room, those types of things that I think, I'm sure it's like that in many position groups, but it's just so small. There's usually 3, can be 2, 4, 5, maybe during camp with a quarterback coach, with the offense coordinator in the room. So it's a small, tight-knit group. And I think, obviously everyone is ultra competitive. That is promoted, and you should compete in every single drill. But at the same time, again, it's that being able to say, yeah, I need to compete. I want to compete. In addition, I want us to win. And I want whoever's playing to play at a really high level. So there is that weird dynamic, I will say, but I really don't think it ever becomes like a splitting issue, or it wasn't for me, at least, in all the organizational stops that I went through. All right, so the next element of this I want to try to tackle is going through every single quarterback that I was in a room with. So bounced around to a lot of different teams. It's usually significant mental gymnastics for me even to go through kind of a linear path of my career as far as who I played for. But going through the quarterback rooms is going to be even that much more difficult. So I will give it my absolute best shot, and I apologize in advance if I forget someone. So here we go. So started off in New Orleans, Aaron Brooks, Jake Delhomme. Next year, I think Cliff Kingsbury was there in one of the off seasons. I know he was, don't know which off season. The next year, Jake Delhomme goes to Carolina. Todd Bauman comes in. So it's Aaron Brooks, Todd Bauman, and I for 2 years. I get traded to Green Bay. Green Bay is Brett Favre, Doug Peterson, Craig Nall. They draft Aaron Rodgers that offseason. Now I am in Chicago on the practice squad. In that room is Kyle Orton playing, Jeff Blake, Rex Grossman is hurt. From there, I get picked up to Minnesota. Dante Culpepper got hurt. Brad Johnson is playing. Sean Hill is on the roster. Next, I'm out of the league for a year on 2 practice squads. Go to New England, Tom Brady, Matt Castle. Carolina for like a week at the very end of the season. Jake Delhomme, Chris Wenke. I still remember Chris Wenke's cleats, baseball cleats, old school, love it. The next year, I am in Detroit. John Kitna, Drew Stanton, Dan Orlovsky. The following year, I'm in the 49ers, Alex Smith, Sean Hill, Jamie Martin. The following year, I am in Cincinnati with Carson and Jordan Palmer. The next year, I am in the Chargers with Phillip Rivers and Billy Bullock. And finally, I'm in Oakland with Bruce Gradkowski got hurt. Jason Campbell is playing. I think Charlie Fry was hurt, and Kyle Bowler was on the roster. That actually was easier than I thought it was going to be. A lot of dudes, a lot of really good dudes, a lot of very smart cats, a lot of guys who love ball and that are probably pretty good coaches across the country, analysts, all those types of things. Fun for me to have a bunch of really cool conversations with those guys at a bunch of, whether you're on different paths, similar paths, all those types of things. I will say, people often ask me, what'd you learn playing quarterback from other quarterbacks? And I think that there are some things you can learn from the elite guys. Obviously, getting a chance to play with Brady for a hot minute, Favre, seeing Aaron early on, those types of things that you can take away. But honestly, more often than not, I took a lot more away from guys who were kind of that, not middle path, but maybe just a touch path better than I was on as far as being able to play more consistently, a long time guy in the league, and just seeing how they work, how they come to work every day, how they communicate, how they process information at the line of scrimmage, how they process information in the quarterback room. And so that was always a big thing for me. The quarterback room, I'm always trying to get faster at playing the game. I felt like the best teams, the best rooms, it was all about helping the quarterback play better on Sundays. And that wasn't always the case. And what I mean by that is, like in any profession, there's a lot of job justification. For example, how long are you staying at the facility? How long were you as a quarterback coach, game planning last night? You slept in the office. You were there till 3:00. You were in at 4:30. And that for me just never really made sense as far as being able to be my peak performer on Sundays. And so I was always trying to take stuff from the quarterback room, whether it be reads, understanding, game plan, opponent, film, that would help me play better on Sundays. And I felt like that wasn't always the focus at every organization. I will say I think it was the focus for the players that did it the best, the longest. And so you can just go down that list, guys like Brady, guys like Favre, guys like Brad Johnson, Delhomme, certain guys that I spent a little bit of Phillip Rivers, those guys, Carson, when they were in the room, it was a lot about how do I play on Sunday, where I felt like some quarterback coaches and maybe even guys who weren't playing, that is kind of your Sunday. That is your opportunity to show off, to know, to contribute. And so just being cognizant of that was something that I had to learn the hard way, necessarily just being able to you don't want to dilute all your energy in a quarterback room when, you're only there with 3 people and you can only focus and be at your absolute peak for so many hours in a day, so many hours in a week. If we're really trying to win games on Sunday, we need to peak on Sunday at kickoff, that type of thing, or really at the end of the game. And so just being mindful of my energy, my ability to focus, all those types of things that kind of grew the longer with more and more experience at that level. Circle back here quickly to quarterback room rivalries. Again, I never felt like any significant tension. Now, I was never really in any sort of like meaningful competition to see who would play. Mine were kind of more offbeat to be like competition to be on the roster, those types of things. Even when I was competing to play, it wasn't really a competition to play. I was injected at the last moment. It wasn't over the course of the entire offseason, those types of things. And so it's hard for me to speak about any significant rivalries. I really will just say that for the most part, overarching across 11 organizations, the quarterback room is one of those places where you have a really strong capacity to empathize with everybody in the room. Almost everybody knows what the starter's going through, maybe not at Tom Brady, Brett Favre levels, but at least throwing a pick, bouncing back, having a bad game, coming back and playing well on the road, those types of things that you can share to kind of elevate those things. I really do think it is a weird thing to understand from the outside. And I'm sure it's not like that everywhere. I heard nightmares about, Flutie and Johnson in Buffalo, I think as one, but I'm sure there were a number of other ones where guys didn't get along. But for the most part, it was kind of everybody pulling in the right direction, people understanding their roles and those things that I think would be surprising to most people. Now, some of the best moments from NFL quarterback room, and really this kind of sprays all over the place, a little shotgun-ish, so to speak. But, I can think of a handful of really amazing conversations, both personally, how, life-wise, those types of things. Everybody's kind of at different stages in life, whether you're starting a family, whether you're single in a new town, whether you've got a bunch of kids, those types of things that just is different than many other, not different, just immediately immersed with those types of peers is probably a little bit different than most people coming out right out of college. But that idea being that, learning from each other more than anything else, just having great, genuine conversations. I think that we're stoked by, for me, a handful of certain things that many quarterback rooms did. And so first thing that jumps to mind is I was on multiple quarterback rooms that had lists of quarterbacks in the league that we most disliked, which is probably a weird thing to think about and realize that other quarterbacks are that petty that we're creating lists in the room on whiteboards that there are quarterbacks that you dislike, but there are, and you can probably, still see it in my own work on this channel as far as videos that do or don't get done, that type of thing. Just somebody, not that you dislike personally like high school, but just like you don't like their game, you don't like how they play, you don't like that organization, those types of things that absolutely happens in the league. I think the other thing that jumps off is just, there are some bad smells in there. There really are. There are some dudes that smell, and there are some dudes that create some bad smells in many of the rooms. And so that was probably another thing. Just like any workplace, honestly, any workplace, there are probably people like that. It's just magnified when you're in a room and there's only 4 other people. You get a pretty quick idea about who's doing what. Another element of some of the best things, conversations-wise, I can remember having multiple conversations about religion. There's a lot of people who are very religious in the league. There's a lot of prayer that goes on before games. There's a lot of chapels, and then there are people that aren't that. And so when you're in a room with 3 or 4 people over the course of many months, especially when you're in there just watching film or waiting for a coach to show up or waiting for the starter to show up, waiting for another guy to get to the room, those conversations will come up. And again, because you're in different spots in life, armed with different artillery on different subjects, some of those conversations get pretty heated. But I do kind of remember a number of those conversations nudging people into, uncomfortable waters, that having to, defend, describe, all those types of things about their decision making that I think, just like any great conversation, take place and make people feel uncomfortable and make them show evidence about why they're thinking this, how they're thinking this, and all those types of things that I got within the quarterback room at multiple different spots. So lots of fun with those types of great conversations. And finally, probably one of my worst moments in NFL quarterback room was many quarterback rooms. Probably in early December, they'll have the team photographer. They'll grab everybody either after a big win or before a game, and all the quarterbacks, quarterback coaches, offense coordinator will jump in and take a photo, kind of like that awkward, position photo that everybody takes at every level of football. But this is kind of like in a game, and the coordinator or quarterback coach or starter will buy a bunch of really big ones, bigger than 8x10, but not like a poster, and they will give it to you framed, matted for Christmas, and everybody gets one, and then everybody in the room gets to sign it. And my first couple years in the league, I think I just autographed them. I think Mike McCarthy did it when we were in New Orleans, and we just autographed them. And so that was all I was used to doing. Well, then I get to Green Bay, and I want to say Brett, maybe Bevel, but someone bought them in the room for us. And the first one I did, this was a new room, different group of guys, different than New Orleans. Good guys, just different. And I'm like the California kid in this. But Brett was one of those cats that had the ability to create interesting smells. And so I ended up having to move around the quarterback room. They actually had stadium seating in their little quarterback room. So I did not want to sit directly in front of him. So moved around, and in their quarterback room, they wrote little paragraphs or little statements about, how meaningful it was. Well, that group was a kind of a bunch of jokesters, I would say, more than anything else. Like good dudes, good old boys, Doug, Brett, Craig. They enjoyed themselves together, a good group. So I just assumed they're like, oh, write a little something, about the group or about what your memory with this player, da-da-da. So the first one I get is Brett's, and no one else had written on Brett's yet. And I think I wrote something like, I'm really glad I moved seats because, whatever, your smells are rough, or something like that, and then signed my name. Well, then I start getting everybody else's passed around, and they're talking about, really nice things like, great to have you part of the organization, fun to see your improvement, great young person, like those types of things. And I'm starting to feel really bad. Like, I think I just ruined Brett Favre's photo. Not that he cared what I wrote, because he definitely didn't. But the idea being that I totally did not read the room correctly, and should have at least glanced around or asked, what are we doing with these little statements? But needless to say, I basically called Brett Favre stank on his autograph and signed it. So I'm sure it's in his basement somewhere. So that is a wrap. NFL quarterback rooms, really special spots where you can learn ball, take it to another level. And for me personally, got a chance to spend a lot of time in there, very fortunate in that regard, but also the idea being, it's a learning environment. It's like any work environment at the highest level. I think, you're excited to be there. You're excited to contribute. You want to do well. And you also want to show that you know your stuff and that you belong. All those things kind of mixed together to both individually get better and collectively pull in the same direction, which is really unique to that position where only one guy plays. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. I will see you next time. Have a good one.